All right. Well, in the Halitics, I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be with you today. It is a Monday. So that means it's a Monday with Arlen Day. Arlen, how are you? Great to see you.
The sun's starting to come out. Hopefully not too humid because I don't like humidity. But anyway, looks good so far.
Well, good luck with that. It's been humid everywhere. I think you're in the Eastern time zone, and we just get that humidity. Plus, it's probably worse. I'm not certain about this, but my suspicions are we are much more humid than we used to be because of, if you want to call it climate change. It's not necessarily global warming or the Holocaust, but just change in the climate due to human activities. In fact, as I understand, by the way, there was a moment of silence when we first started with Arlen. For that, I do apologize, but we got him right on. I'll see if I can get that audio back for you. Arlen, I understand even like Phoenix, which used to be so dry in the desert now with all the auto exhaust, they have some humidity issues. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am not, and I don't do well with humidity at all. I mean, my body pretty much shuts down, and so I don't like to. I don't like to be feeling humidity.
Wow, sort of a little delicate there. Your body actually does it really shut down? Or you? That sounds a little bit dramatic, melodramatic.
No, you
Perhaps.
got to understand where I live in Monterey, right along the Central Coast. There, it's always very moderate temperature, pretty cool, and we don't have humidity. So I seem to do well there, and I'm happy, and I'm used to that. And then I come here and I feel the humidity, and it kind of weighs heavily on me. I guess I am delicate. What can I say?
All right, there it is, Arlen, acknowledging a little bit delicate, but why not? Why shouldn't you? I mean, that's fine. And I can't stand the heat either right now. I can't take it. It's, my wife is often talking about moving north. We had a really lovely time in Maine a couple of weekends ago, and I certainly wouldn't object to a retirement to Maine. Although I don't know that I'll retire because it's like hard. How do you retire if you're not working? I don't know if you can call what I do right now working. Arlen, I have you on for sort of a little bit more of a mainstream viewpoint. The title of today's program, Cancer or Symptom Over Trump's Face. So that's kind of the question. Do we just need a Trumpectomy? Will that solve all of our problems or most of them? Or is it a little bit bigger? Is the problem a little bit bigger than that? So you're going to help us answer. And I think we both agree a Trumpectomy isn't sufficient, but maybe you think it will do a lot more good than I do. Do you want to just weigh in real quick on how much of our current woes in this country and around the world do you think can be laid at the feet of Donald Trump?
Well, I think a lot, just because he's entirely taken over the Republican Party, and that's one of our two major parties, and they've pretty much gone along with him on everything, and his views are very strange and very frightening in many ways. The article I sent you from Edsel, was scary to me because it foretold some very scary situation where Trump would just take everything over and have total control over everything because he's got, like I say, the entire party with him.
Well, he's an authoritarian, right? No question about it. And it seems as though whatever kind of checks on the power of the executive branch were implemented, through the foresight of the founders, have largely been taken away by the court. So that's a real concern. And we've seen from Trump's history that he doesn't view himself as bound by regular rules. So it's pretty scary. I agree. My question was more, how much, though, of our problems can we lay at Trump's feet? We're going to talk about the Edsall piece. To be fair, I don't think can you blame him for the war in Gaza or if we don't want to call it a war, I don't like to call it a war, the killing in Gaza. We just saw another 30 killed in the past 24 hours. And I have a number of 170 Palestinians killed by Israel with the support of the United States government over the past 4 days. That you can't really blame on Trump, can you?
No, as far as foreign policy goes, Trump is not a major factor. I mean, his is more the domestic policy and not, he's not so totally tuned into the foreign situation, but yeah, he can't be blamed for what's going on in Gaza, and I'm really hoping that Kamala Harris will make, change, will move a little bit away from the Biden position of let's give Netanyahu whatever he wants, because unless there's some restriction on what we give Israel, Netanyahu's going to continue to do what he wants to do, without any hesitation, and that's bad. She did say some nice things, I thought, about the Gaza situation, saying that it's terrible, all this killing of all the civilians, and that there is some hope, for changing that, and that's what I'm hoping.
So I'm glad you said that, because not because I necessarily agree with you, but because I was going to ask you, and we'll delve into it a little bit because you had said last week, in fact, just to kind of set the table. By the thought leader Arlen Grossman with us today, Monday, August 26th, and there you can see I did the math. I had the last death count I had was Thursday, 40,265, and of course that's a very round number. It's not. Well, it's not a round number. It's not like 40,000, but it's an estimate for sure. And the real numbers we believe are probably substantially higher. But over the past 4 days, since that number was reported on Thursday, we've now got to 40,435. That's 170 over the past 4 days. So a terrible, terrible situation. Real quick, before we talk about Harris and her position on Israel, Palestine, Gaza, and I've always been less harshly critical of Trump than you and than most other people on the left. His position is awful on Israel. He has been consistently saying Israel, he's been blaming Biden for whatever non-existent fetters Biden has put on Israel. So it seems as though Trump is pandering to the right-wing pro-Israel Zionist base and would be even less inclined than the Biden-Harris administration has been to put any limits on Israel. You said, and I'm glad you mentioned, Arlen, just to get to this, that you were waiting on Harris. You were hoping she would be better than Biden, and correct me if I'm incorrectly stating your views, you were hoping that she would be better than Biden. And then you said you were, cautiously optimistic based on what you heard at the DNC. Is that fair?
Well, she did make a point of saying that we needed to, give the Palestinians a chance to have their own country, that there should be a two-state solution, and that's exactly what we need. Where Biden was, not very strong about that, but she's saying, hey, we really have to, help the Palestinians, help the people in Gaza, and stop all this unnecessary killing. And so, I'm hoping that, she's been a little bit stronger against the policy that the Democrats have had so far with Biden. So I'm hoping that it's real and she'll do something about it. I mean, there is certainly a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are very upset with what's going on in Gaza, and I think it has to be addressed.
Yeah, I was going to play a clip. I played this Friday. I have a different take. I felt it was lip service at best. I didn't feel that there was any, I don't even say I don't feel, I didn't hear any commitment to changing policy in any way. She did express concern, or I guess she said that she was upset about, seeing all the deaths and it was time for a ceasefire. But at no point did she attribute the privations, the suffering, basically the eradication of Gaza to either the Israeli policy or our complete support of Israel. So for me, it wasn't not, I won't even say it wasn't enough. It was nothing. She said nothing to me that I felt was powerful, moving, or gave reason to have hope. But you feel differently, and that's fine. I mean, I don't want to argue with you. Do you think it's just would you say that she just feels, or her advisors have said to her, you can't say anything negative about Israel. You can't ever criticize Israel, but once you're in power, then you can do something.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah, we definitely, everybody agrees, politically that we have to support Israel and make sure that they exist, are not overtaken. But yeah, when it comes to what's actually happening in Gaza, it's certainly worse than we'd like to see. And she really has to, she hasn't had a chance yet to do anything. So we have to give her the time. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll learn some specifics about if she has any changes in the policy. We don't know yet, but I'm confident.
All right, I'm not going to go off script, but I'm going to jump forward in the script because you said, Arlen, that pretty much everyone agrees that you can't take on the Israeli lobby. You can't take on AIPAC. So I want to play this. This was yesterday on Face the Nation. I also have the Israeli ambassador to the United States who spoke also on Face the Nation. But let's go first to the third. I think she was the third guest here. This is Summer Lee, who has been targeted by AIPAC, but she was able to prevail despite the attacks that she had to weather, and was reelected as Congresswoman from the Pittsburgh area. So here's Summer Lee on Face the Nation.
We turn now to Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman Summer Lee. She joins us from Pittsburgh. Good morning to you, Congresswoman.
Good morning.
Our CBS polling shows that a majority of Americans, 59% of them, think the U.S. should encourage Israel to stop or decrease its military actions in Gaza. At the Democratic convention, Vice President Harris received loud applause for these remarks.
President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
All right, so I'll stop it there real quick, and we'll hear from Summer Lee, Representative Lee. But there, you heard the section of the speech by Harris that got a lot of applause, and I think you also were you also feel was indicative of perhaps a sea change in U.S. policy. Is that fair to say, Arlen?
Well, I'm hoping. I don't know for sure, and only time will tell.
And again, no commitment right whatsoever, nor any blame lodged at Israel, or for that matter, the United States for its unconditional support for Israel.
Well, she could only say so much, and she's not going to criticize the Biden administration for what they're doing, at this point. Right now, she just has to get everybody on board with, I guess, a more fair and moderate position. And maybe, with time, when she gets some power or is willing to commit, she'll say a little bit more on that and what will make her different than what President Biden has been doing.
Okay, let's play more from Rep. Lee.
Now, that is largely just restating existing U.S. policy. Do you?
So the host there is saying there's no real change. Like you just said, so I guess she disagrees because she doesn't feel that there was anything substantive or even a shift in tone. But I guess, obviously, the folks at the convention and you feel differently on that, Arlen. Is that fair to say?
I'm hoping. That's all I can say. I have no reassurance, knowing for sure what she will do, but just based on the things she said so far, I think there is some reasonable hope that she will do things differently.
All right, let's go back to Summer Lee then.
I think that's sufficient outreach to those who felt the administration hasn't expressed empathy.
I think that, I think people who are experiencing this, right, who are outside of the arena, who have been organizing since October, that is a step, but I think that what they really were asking for was, of course, the opportunity to speak for themselves. I think that, like all people, when you are experiencing something, you want to be able to tell your own story. And a lot of the people who, Palestinian American, Arabs and Muslims, were asking for that opportunity. So while, we all obviously believe that there should be a ceasefire immediately and permanently, and that Palestinians, just like Israelis, deserve the right to self-determination, we have to do more than just say that we believe that. We have to actually take steps that are going to evidence that, take steps that are going to show that we're willing to start to listen to people who have been outside of the political, I would say, conversation for so long. Yeah. It's been a third rail, and there's going to be a lot more work that we have to do to show to this demographic that the Democratic Party includes them in its big tent, includes them in our foreign policy considerations, and also includes them in our conversations around humanity and human rights.
All right, so I want to stop it there. We'll get to a little more from Representative Lee. But what she's alluding to, or I guess saying, and I think it's an interesting rejoinder to what you said, Arlen, is, okay, maybe Harris, by the way, I don't need to inject myself into this. Maybe Harris can't buck Biden. Maybe she can't say we've been doing this wrong. But at least can't the DNC hear from a Palestinian activist? Couldn't at least a representative from Uncommitted have been given a speaker slot? Which they were not. They were prevented from even expressing a dissenting view. So that's a real problem, Summerlee says, even if we're going to give Harris the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean somebody shouldn't have been there to speak for the Palestinians.
And I was really upset when the convention put on some parents of the hostages and made a very big, gave them a long time to talk about how horrible it is, for their children to be hostages, which is understandable and true. But I just don't think it was something they really should have done, because there is so much distrust of what the U.S. is doing as far as giving Netanyahu so much power, and not thinking about that there's so many Democrats, so many who are against what we're doing and really are pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza, and you can't just ignore those.
Or simply anti-genocide, right? It may be you're not necessarily saying, oh, I'm totally on the side of the Gazans, but I don't want Israel just completely eradicating that country from the face of the earth, which is exactly what they're doing with the full backing of the Biden-Harris administration. And Summerlee is saying we need someone else there. Also, just real quick, I didn't know I didn't watch any of the convention live. Only things I know from the convention are what I've seen basically from other hosts' YouTube videos and my reviewing, because I won't, to me, it's just a sales pitch. I don't, like I never, on KRXA, we used to play those infomercials where we would sell pills, like whatever. I never listened to those. To me, there's no difference between the hucksters who peddle that snake oil and the DNC. I draw no distinctions. But that said, now that you mentioned, I didn't know there were hostage families there, but it's very disingenuous of the DNC then to present them as though they're these victims of Hamas, when in fact the hostage families are very harshly critical of Bibi. They want a change in leadership in Israel. They hold the current Israeli government as responsible now for the fate of their loved ones as they do Hamas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that the Democrats really have to take a stronger position than they have right now. And whether Kamala differs from Biden's point of view, we don't know for sure, but I'm hoping that she does, and I'm hoping she'll make some changes that will give an actual opportunity for Gaza to get their own to be able to stop all this innocent killing and genocide that's going on.
You're watching Halitics. That's Arlen. He's our thought leader, pundit, guest of the day. Great to have you with us, Arlen. But all that said, your position, you're staunchly in support of Harris for president, right? That has is staunchly too strong, or is that fair?
Well, staunchly would be fair, because I thought that convention was done about as well as you could possibly do. Yes, it is an infomercial, as are both conventions, but it was very well done on the Democratic side. And I was hoping that there would be like a bump in the polls in her favor, and I was worried that there wouldn't be. I did see one poll that the New York Times said showed her 7 points ahead, but I think that may have been an outlier. Haven't seen anything since. So I'm still worried it's just too close to make me comfortable. And the thought of Trump being in office is just too scary for me to accept. I think it would be horrible for this country.
Yeah, I think. Okay, let's play more from Summer Lee. And then
you were talking about the decision at the DNC to deny anyone from the uncommitted movement or Palestinian American to take the stage. Congressman Ro Khanna tweeted, "It was a tragic mistake, perpetuating the erasure of the Palestinian story and voice." Why do you think Democratic leaders resisted it? And is it a self-inflicted wound?
I think that there has been, and I think that if you really look at this, long before October 7th, it was almost taboo to talk about Palestinians, to talk about the experiences that they have and that they continue to have in our politics. And I think that this was a continuation of it. To put on stage, first of all, I think it's important that we recognize that even the way we talk about the movement is in a way that sometimes is a little wide, is broad. It doesn't always take into account what folks are arguing about. I think that whether it's the Black Lives Movement or the movement for Palestinian rights, there's always this rush to say that their movement, the ways that they protest, the tactics, the strategies are inconvenient. And I think that that's just the way that we've done it, especially when we're nervous about a presidential election that we all know is incredibly important. Defeating Trump is the top concern, but we can do that, and we can also give space, create space for people, voices that are marginalized. We missed an opportunity to do that here, and in doing so,
I'll stop it there, Arlen. Basically, she's just as far to the left as the Democratic Party will allow anyone to go. She throws in the talking point there, well, no matter what, we have to defeat Trump. Doesn't this tell us we need a party to the left of the Democratic Party? There's simply no space in the Democratic Party to challenge party leadership to the point where you say these people are corrupt. These people, because she never used the word corrupt. These people are bought and paid for by AIPAC. These people, the humanity of a group of people that are being wiped off the map is of zero moment to them. Hell, they'd rather lose and not, they'd rather lose to Trump than embrace a true pro-humanity policy. So we must go somewhere else. We can no longer rely. We can no longer count on the Democratic Party to champion us in any way.
Well, it's not like we have any choices, Hal. Unfortunately, the system is set up where you just have Democrats and you have Republicans. And, I like to see the Democratic Party move farther left, but there's no, reason for them to do so at this point, especially as, Republicans are just totally so right-wing and pro-Trump. So I wish I had.
How will that ever change? I asked you this once before. How can we change that unless the Democratic Party candidates are legitimately afraid that they will lose? And even if they are afraid they will lose, it doesn't matter. Because in 2016, Hillary Clinton was, the party, and she did win. I'm not saying Bernie exactly cheated out of it, although I think there was cheating going on. But the Democratic Party leadership has made a decision, it seems to me, that rather than move to the left on critical issues, they would prefer to lose to even a Trump. So given that fact, how can we possibly change the party?
Well, and one problem you have too is this is basically a fairly conservative country. There's just not a lot of affinity for moving left on a lot of these issues. I mean, we would like to see that happen, but I'm not sure if the entire country is ready for that. So
Well, when have they been given an opportunity? They had an opportunity in 2016 to move left with Bernie, and he did so much better than anybody expected. So I don't know where the idea is that yes, on social issues, I agree with you. Americans do reject much of the far left, if we want to call it that, views on social issues, but not on economics. On economics, we've seen over and over. In Florida, for example, the $15 minimum wage went easily. Even on some social justice issues like abortion, like choice, the red states can't seem to ban them using referenda. So if the Democratic Party were to embrace true social justice, true economic justice, and pick and choose its social justice battles, I don't see why you don't think they would do much better than they're doing right now.
Well, we don't know how. I'm not sure that the Democratic Party and the country is ready for, those kind of left-based issues that you're talking about. I still think,
like Medicare for all, which consistently polls really well despite every single media outlet constantly attacking it? I mean, Trump won in 2016 because he was to the left on Hillary on critical economic issues. Just real quick, here's another individual who wasn't invited to speak at the Democratic convention. This homeless little boy who's 7 years old, or any member of his family. And this is from, it was actually first in the San Jose Mercury News. I got it out of SiliconValley.com. There was no talk about the victims of the rapacious neoliberal agenda that Democrats have embraced. So maybe it's true people wouldn't vote for a kinder, gentler America, but they haven't been given an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with you on the issues. You're right, and I'm hoping that Kamala will make some changes and shows, because she made a point of that she's on the side of working people, on the side of the middle class, that she's willing to raise taxes on the wealthier.
I don't think she said that. The only thing she said was that Trump would cut taxes on the wealthy. She didn't say she would raise them.
Well, I think that there's an implication to that, just because in order to have some money for the middle class and the working people, the money is going to have to come from somewhere. So it would have to come from those who, have a lot of money.
We'll see. All right, Arlen with us. Arlen, I'm trying so hard not to argue with you and just listen and drink in your wisdom, which is quite significant. It's just I'm just horrified at what I see in our country. I'm horrified at our unwavering support for Israel. I was just absolutely appalled at the standing that she got for her mealy-mouthed words about Palestine, saying we'll support Israel at all costs, right? I mean, she said that. She said, I'll always support Israel. We'll always be there for Israel. She condemned Hamas in no uncertain terms, but any talk about the suffering of the Palestinian people was in the passive voice. That just horrified me. I just finished a book on the Holocaust by Martin Amis. There's a movie, The Zone of Interest. It's based on the book, loosely based. The book is much better, by the way, I believe, than the movie, which wasn't bad. The movie was good. The book's better. We are right now as a nation complicit in a Holocaust, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with that knowledge. And if you read the book by Amos, he doesn't know either. I mean, you can describe it, but I don't know what we can do.
Well, Holocaust is a little bit too strong of a word for what's going on right now. You can
in your opinion, I mean, not in mine, but okay.
Well, I mean, they're not, rounding up, Palestinians in camps and, just killing them. But there is, of course, far too much, people losing lives and, innocent people getting killed with our policies right now. And that has to change. I can only hope that Kamala will be reasonable about this, and only time will tell, like I say.
Well, I think there are camps. They may not be death camps, but there are concentration camps. Palestinian civilians are routinely being rounded up. They're being sexually abused in those camps. It is true that they're not being gassed. I'll give you that. But we are seeing, again, we've seen images of mass graves. We've seen we've seen Palestinians with their hands tied behind their back, shot into mass graves. It's pretty close. And yeah, Israel isn't doing quite exactly what the Nazis did, but they're dehumanizing the Gazans. And one difference is, as far as I know, we never provided any military materiel to the Nazis, but we are providing the bombs that are being used to wipe Gaza off the face of the map.
Yeah, we have some complicity in this, and we've allowed Israel and Netanyahu to get away with far too much. I think, I got to believe that, Kamala, with what the things she says, is going to be more moderate than Biden, and more agreeable to, changing things to make it better for the people in Gaza. I mean, she's saying she wants them to have, their own power, to be able to be in charge of themselves, and there to be a two-state solution. So, I'm just hoping that she'll follow through on that, and we don't know yet, because we don't know.
Well,
for sure.
I hope I'm wrong. But
yeah,
we'll see. But we've seen so much. Let me say it this way: I hope I'm wrong about Harris, but I'm not wrong about what the U.S. is doing right now, and it is a crime against humanity. It is a war crime, as that term has been defined. And it's heartbreaking to me. It's hard for me to have much joy in life knowing that we're doing this. I know people can compartmentalize, but I have a lot of trouble doing that.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it's unnecessary, and it's wrong. And we have the power to actually do something about it, to rein in Israel and to rein in Netanyahu. And I'm hoping that a new administration, like Harris administration, will do that. But of course, first of all, we got to make sure Trump doesn't get in, because he's even worse.
Well, I just can't. To me, it's what's worse than genocide. I don't, supporting genocide. It's hard for me. You get to a point where you're like, okay, they're both so evil. We have to go in a different direction. That's my view, and that's my problem with Edsel's piece here. Is the entire focus is on Trump, as though he's some sort of unique evil, rather than it being our political system that has led us to this place where we have two such horrible choices that I can't even condemn people for voting for Trump because of how bad Harris is. But here's Edsall. Trump isn't finished. And I was surprised by this piece, because Edsall is the most progressive, I think, in general, the farthest to the left columnist in the New York Times. And yet he here pretty much just plays by the New York Times playbook, which is condemn Trump at all costs, and it's all Trump. He's just the unique evil. But before we get into that, I have a question for you, Arlen. As a regular New York Times reader, a consumer, if you will, of the newspaper, why is this called, and I highlighted it in yellow, you can see on your screen, and also put in the box, guest. Why is this a guest essay? Edsall, it even says right there, contributes a weekly column. If he's a weekly contributor, how can this be a guest essay? And I'm dead serious about that question. I'm totally confused by this.
I have no answer for you. I don't know why the New York Times did that. I don't know.
I mean, do you get my query? Why I'd be questioning that?
Well, yeah, so. Oh, well, tell me. Well, what's so?
I don't know. The only thing it just occurred to me is this is my only guess, and I think now I'm right. Although I didn't ask you the question. It wasn't a rhetorical question. I really didn't know the answer. But when I started asking it, I started to think, okay, maybe this is the reason. I believe, based on the font, that this was published in the New York Times Magazine, not in the daily. And if that's in the regular print edition or the regular, not tabloid, but, open style, but this was in their magazine. So maybe it's a guest essay to the magazine, which is considered distinct from the regular newspaper. That's the only guess I have.
Well, this wasn't, the date indicates it wasn't Sunday, so I don't think it would be in the magazine. I assume it's on their regular, website.
Here's the answer. I have the same point. By the way, I'm cutting Arlen's face off with his title. Let me get it back. There we go. What you said makes a lot of sense, but in fact, the magazine does publish pieces in its pages, if you will, pages in quotes. Let me see if I can get that there. It does publish in its pages before the Sunday edition comes out in print on the website. So you do have articles that are published in print in the New York Times Magazine on the Sunday, which would have been the 25th, but they come out earlier online.
Well, that may well be. I saw it online, at the Times, and it looked like an interesting story, and I read it. I didn't assume that it wasn't on their regular website along with other columnists.
Well, they do. They conflate everything, but I think they're just making kind of a distinction without a difference. This is for their magazine, not their day. I'm guesstimating. I'm guessing why they call it a guest essay. That's all, Arlen, because to me, it doesn't make sense that your regular columnist would have a guest essay, but maybe if he doesn't regularly write for the magazine, that's the only explanation. By the way, I put on for the slide the New York Times. I took this out of the New York Times website, but Arlen does have the entire article posted at his website. I didn't want to use that just because I'd rather go to the original source. But there's always always really good stuff, including this article, which is very thought-provoking, at thebigpicturereport.com, where Arlen blogs. So very interesting piece. Before we get into it, Arlen, was there anything in particular? I have some of it. I don't have all of it. I have some sections that really jumped out at you that you thought were particularly disturbing, perturbing, worrisome.
Yeah, there was a lot in there that really scared me. That that Trump is really taken control, like I said, of the entire party, and he's pretty much got the judiciary on his side. So if he were to be elected, he would have very few restrictions, stopping him from doing whatever he wants to do. And we know what would happen if he did what he wants to do. He would start, doing a lot of horrible things to people, trying to, put like journalists in jail, and just getting back at his enemies. Basically, he would try to get Biden impeached and get him into court, and he would do all the worst possible things that we could think of, and he would have no real restrictions. I mean, especially now that the Supreme Court has said that he's pretty much innocent of anything that he does while he's in office. That's an official act. I mean, that's really scary, because that's way too much, giving too much, to Trump to be able to, do whatever he wants and not be accountable for it.
Now, let me see if I can get this on screen. Here's what part of what Lawrence Tribe has to say, which is consistent with what you were saying, Arlen. And rather than picking apart some of the criticism of Trump in here, which I'm often desirous of doing, I'm going to actually back up the concern that you raise and that Willence and Tribe raises. And I mentioned the book I just finished called The Zone of Interest by Martin Amis. And one of the passages towards the end, and it's fictionalized, but he does kind of loosely base it, the author Amos loosely bases it on real Nazis and their families, is the commandant of Auschwitz's wife. Hannah is her name in the book. Her real name was Hedwig. But in the book, in the book also, he makes her to be a more appealing figure than the real wife of the Nazi was. The real wife was complicit. She took she was a killer. I don't know that she killed anyone deliberately, but she overlooked. She didn't care. She was supportive of her husband's mass murder. And the book, Amos makes her a less unappealing figure. But at one point towards the end, she condemns the communists, and she condemns the other those who fought the Nazis before they came to power, saying, you said the Social Democrats were just as bad. You said we can't support the Social Democrats to stop the Nazis, meaning she's saying to the communists, you said they were equally bad as the Nazis, and obviously they weren't as bad. So assuming that Trump is a Stalin, a Hitler, as is actually suggested in the piece, then for me to argue, well, the Democrats are awful, you can't vote for them either, they're complicit in Israeli genocide, that's a little bit naive, right? I mean, as bad as we are, as bad as the Democrats are, as much harm as they're doing, if Trump is a Hitler or Stalin, then I guess maybe it's okay to vote for Harris under those circumstances. So I just wanted to make that point, and that's kind of the argument here, is that Trump is that evil. I'm not sure he is. I don't know that I accept that, but I hear it. I hear the argument.
Yeah, he's getting unfortunately, more and more acceptable in many ways, because you remember after January 6th, there were all these businesses and corporations that were saying, they were horrified by what Trump was doing, and all of a sudden, and they said they wouldn't give any more support to anybody who thought that the election wasn't real, and now they've changed their mind. They're already backing those same candidates that are saying that, and
they want to win, Arlen. I mean, that's politics, right? I mean, people want to win. I mean, you've heard AOC and Bernie extol how great Kamala is, and before that they were saying we've got to keep Biden in office. I mean, this is what politicians do. They're loyal to their party, which is another reason I think we need another party, because both parties are awful, and we can't expect anyone in either party to ever really, with very few exceptions, we do see Republicans slightly more willing on occasion to buck their party than Democrats. It's true. We saw Liz Cheney go after Trump. I'm not sure she was bucking her party, but she go after Trump. We've seen the rump Republicans take on their speaker. We don't see Democrats do that, which I think is an argument for a very strong one, a very powerful one for a third party. But is Trump, but to get to the argument that, okay, whatever checks and balances there were on the presidency have been wiped out by the court, I think that's a reason to be scared. But I also would say it ignores the fact that those checks and balances were already gone. I mean, what consequences did Bush face for torture?
True, but I think when you go back to the days of Bush and earlier Republicans, I think there was still some resistance to anything that would be over the top, but there's no resistance anywhere now in the Republican Party or anybody on their side. They're just willing to go along with everything that Trump says he wants, and they're all afraid of, bucking.
Well, there was no call in the Republican Party for any investigation into the torture at Abu Ghraib. And didn't Nancy Pelosi take off impeachment from the table? So there were no consequences and Bush is now lauded by many as a reasonable Republican. He was within the Washington consensus, unlike Trump. What about Obama? Obama spied on all of us. Obama launched drone attacks against U.S. citizens, killing them extrajudicially. There's been no consequences for that. Nobody said, we better look into what Barack Obama did that was illegal. where he violated the due process rights of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans? There's been no investigation.
It's interesting, too, that in the Republican convention, you didn't see any past presidents or anybody that had any power before Trump on stage. I mean, those kind of, the Bushes, Romneys, people like that don't want any part of Trump.
But well, Arlen, is that an criticism? I mean, would you want the Bushes telling the world what a great person you are? I mean, if the Bushes, George H.W. is he even still alive? I think he's dead, right? He's dead. So the only Bush who could be there is W. I don't know if I want W and Cheney at my convention saying how great I am.
Well, that is true. I can't argue there, but the point right now is that there is absolutely no resistance at all on the Republican side to anything that Trump wants to do, and everybody who is a Republican is not willing to buck Trump at all. They're all scared of him. They know they're going 100% full in for him, and I think that worries me. At least the Democrats have a little bit of they're willing to make some criticism.
Well, you heard Summer Lee. To be fair, Arlen, you did hear Summer Lee push back a little bit on the fact that there were no pro-Palestinian advocates at the convention. So that's true. That's a plus. I agree.
There should have been. But
I'm saying that bolsters your point that at least there's a little bit of dissent in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, not enough, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
So here's my biggest beef with, and let me just give you actually one more quote from the article by which you recommended, which is at your website, Trump Isn't Finished by Edsel, who I agree is a really good columnist on balance. I like Sean Wilentz. I think he's obviously he's incredibly intelligent. He took on to a degree, I believe, the 1619 Project, and I give him credit for that because that took some bravery when everyone was extolling that bad piece of history. He was willing to say, no, there's some real questions about this work. So I give Sean Wilentz credit for that. And this is your point. You were talking about the courts, how the courts will not keep any check on Trump. And likewise, Wilentz says his supporters are just rabid, and they're not going to be, in any way challenged in their belief that Trump should have been the president. If he is stopped, it would be thwarting history's purpose and a diabolical act of treason. Scary stuff.
Yeah, I think that one of the scariest things of all is that if this election is it doesn't matter whether it's close or not, that the Republicans are going to say it's a bad, dishonest election, and they're going to do everything they can to, and they've got a lot of the court on their side, to change, try to change the results and give the Republicans an opportunity to, question the results and not certify many of the elections. So it's going to be messy one way or another.
Arlen, couldn't you say, though, that in 2016 and maybe even today, the supporters of the Democrat would view any result other than her victory as the thwarting of history's purpose, which is to have a woman president, or in the case of Harris, a woman of color president? And certainly hasn't the term treason often been used to describe what Trump allegedly, although without any evidence, did, which is to actually conspire directly with Russia? I mean, it seems like the allegations against Trump supporters could equally be lodged against Hillary Clinton supporters, and maybe to a lesser degree, Harris supporters. I don't want to go too far on that, and I'm not. My point is just we've got this incredibly toxic political environment which we should try to, rather than just simply ascribe all the faults and all the problems that are in the system to one side, we should recognize that this is something that we're facing as a nation, that this is a cancer that Trump is not the cancer. He's the upset stomach that shows you have you have a tumor in your stomach. He's not actually the tumor. He's not the metastasizing tumor. He might be one tumor that's particularly painful, but excising him isn't going to restore freedom, democracy, put homeless people in houses, stop the killing in Israel. It's not going to do any of those things.
Well, let me start by saying that there's a big difference between the Democrats and Republicans when it comes to elections. The Democrats, when they lost in 2016, did not, call for, did not, say there was a conspiracy and say it was, wrong and illegal and anything like that. They accepted the fact that Trump won. And that's totally different than what the Republicans are doing, because Republicans, led by Trump, were saying, hey, this election was stolen from me, despite the fact that there was no evidence that it was, and all the evidence was that it was a very fair election. The Democrats haven't done anything like that. So there is a big difference there.
All right, Arlen with us on Halitics. Arlen, are you troubled? I'm going to switch gears. We do have an article here that you also recommended about J.D. Vance, but I'm going to perhaps hold that off maybe until next week, just because I have some other stories that I think are a little more topical. And let me just put this on screen right here. And by the way, if you want to call us, we'll take your call. I'll take your call, 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to anything you want to say. By the way, take me on more than Arlen. If you disagree, as I'm sure many of you do, with everything I've said today, please go after me. You can disagree with Arlen, but do it in a gentle way. You don't have to with me. Does this concern you, Arlen? Do you think this is going to put a little wind in Trump's sails? And let me play a little bit of a clip from here. Here's let me play the JFK clip where RFK, not JFK, RFK Jr. speaking here.
Trump told me that he wanted it. He also told me that he wanted to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy. He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States.
All right, I'll stop it there. There's more to it. Actually, let me play a little more of this, Arlen, just to hear what RFK Jr. has to say, and then I'll get your thoughts.
And the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country.
All right, I'll stop that, but that's kind of similar to some of the things Harris said. Does this trouble, are you, putting aside the substance, does this worry you that this could help Trump significally, the endorsement?
I don't think it will. I think most people have recognized that RFK Jr. is kind of a nut. He's taken every position possible, and he doesn't have any real substance. I don't think. He went to the Harris campaign to see if he could join with them if they would give him a position, and I guess they weren't willing to go along with that. So he went to Trump, and Trump is probably going to offer him something. I don't know what, but it's enough that he's willing to go along with Trump. But he's just he's all over the map with all kinds of things. And one thing you have to consider that I thought was interesting. Somebody mentioned the fact that he was always famous for being a environmentalist, and here he is with somebody who has the worst possible record on environment, and that's Trump. I mean, it just, none of it fits. I think it's all for him, and anything that he thinks will help him, and of course the rest of his family condemns him, understandably.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken. I maybe on the margins, I agree with your description, your characterization of RFK Jr. As not in any way a serious person. I certainly think he's in many ways reprehensible. I think on the margins, maybe Trump could pick up a 0.5 percentage point, maybe 1% in some states. If that happens, it could be meaningful. We don't know that, but it certainly, this article from the Post from earlier in August suggests just what a opportunist he is and how fundamentally untrustworthy RFK Jr. is. So I'm with you there. I also thought your point about him betraying whatever, or certainly for, spending whatever political capital he might have built up for himself as an environmentalist is clear as well. Trump, it's not, whatever Trump is no environmentalist. So those, it's political theater. On the other hand, there's a relatively small percentage of Americans, but sizable number nonetheless, who have put their confidence in RFK Jr. So I'm surprised this doesn't provide you with any concern.
Well, I would be very concerned if this election is as close as you're implying, because I don't want to see that. I'd like to see, Kamala take advantage of a very great Democratic convention, and everybody seeming to be on her side, and her coming across as really a good, normal candidate who has a positive attitude and smiles sometimes, and is just sounds normal, while Trump is just talking crazier and crazier. And I think, I want to see her at least maybe 4 or 5 points ahead in the polls, and I haven't seen it yet. Although there was the one that I did see from the New York Times. So I'm waiting for the next couple of days to see if it's going to be close. I don't want it to be close.
Yeah, no, I'm with. Of course, if she had a sizable lead, I don't think it would matter. But as you mentioned, it's pretty tight right now. I would say the wind is more behind her. Trump has really been campaigning very poorly lately, and if that changes, that could also change the trajectory of the race. We'll see what happens. But I saw a poll it was more like a public opinion survey. That's where people were saying, actually, on the issues, whether it's immigration, the economy, they actually like Trump better. And this was despite the fact that a majority or a plurality was supporting Harris. So it's a likability contest right now that Trump's losing. It's quite interesting because many felt that Trump had this Svengali-like grip on his supporters, and yet it doesn't appear to be the case at all. If anything, his supporters, or many Americans who agree with him on issues, are saying, no, we're not going to vote for you because you're a jerk, you're a horse's ass, you're unpleasant, and we also don't trust you to leave power, or to, not to try to consolidate all the power you can in yourself and never leave office. So I think that's interesting anyway.
I just think that, Trump can't really change who he is. Everybody, his people want him to, start talking about issues and not get into things about Kamala's race and all those kind of things, calling her a Marxist and a communist. I mean, he's very extreme, but that's the only way he knows how to be. And I think as he gets older, he gets even crazier and says crazier things. And, I hope that people are paying attention. And I think in comparison, Kamala looks, like I say, more of a normal candidate. And as Walz has been saying about the Republicans, they're kind of weird, especially with both Trump and J.D. Vance.
Last point I'll make, Arlen, I'll give you the final word. We've been just about an hour now. I don't really know what, you use the term normal. You've used it several times. I'm going to assume that normal means your positions and your rhetoric are kind of in line with your parties. So a George W. Bush would have been considered a normal candidate, a Romney, an Obama, a Hillary would all be considered normal, Biden, long time in office. But when you see what, quote, normal, unquote, candidates and presidents and Senate majority leaders and House speakers have done, can you blame Americans for saying, well, I want something that's not normal?
Well, I think if they look at, who Trump is and what he's talking about, I think there's a big difference. I mean, it should scare people. I wish it did more, but it doesn't. And like I say,
They might be scared, but they might say that the normies have done so much harm, even to me personally. My life is a shambles because of what the Harvard law educated people have done and their professorial advisors. They've destroyed my world. So maybe Trump's got all those issues, but how, what do I have to lose by voting for him?
Well, what I do like is what I've seen. If it's true that people have been getting more excited about Harris, that they're starting to volunteer more, give more money, getting more excited about her candidacy, and that's got to help her a lot, I would think, and that's what I'm hoping will help with turnout and everything else. So. But I don't disagree with you. Our system is so bad, and what we have right now is really awful, and there has to be changes. And I kind of wish, they were closer to what you're saying the Democrats would be, but I don't know if they can, or I don't know if they will. I don't know.
All right, Arlen, I got to do something because our heads are different sizes, and I'm having a lot of trouble with that. I'm going to have to try to get you centered better starting next week. That's definitely on me as the producer. I'm sort of like producer, director, writer, star, the whole 9 yards. That's why I like to do this. I'm not good at delegating. Arlen with us. Final word from you, Arlen Grossman, before we say adios until next Monday.
Well, like I say, I'm very interested in what the polls will be saying in the next couple of days if the convention made a difference in how people feel. I'm hoping it does, because like I say, Trump is just getting worse and worse, and so I just the thought of him as president just horrifies me.
All right, Arlen, I'll see you Monday, if not before. I don't know when you're going back to Monterey, but then we'll have to change our time again for Mondays, or go back to the old time or whatever. I'll be back tomorrow.
Good.
Shut up.